It was my neighbor who alerted my attention to them. "You have one too, Dylan," he announced as I stepped out of my car. Work had been terrible that day, and I was ready to get inside and see Robin. But Jonathan loved his afternoon chats. He stood on the edge of his yard nearest my property, fanning his face with his fedora and casting a glance at the side of my house. "I have what?" I asked, pulling my briefcase out and closing my car door. "Graffiti, they got my house too." I stopped. "Huh?" He didn't say anything, just pointed. I stepped closer to him and followed his finger. Jonathan was right. There was a bright blue dot spray painted on my house. It was clearly visible against the dark red brick and was next to Chandler's window. "Who the hell did that?" I asked, thinking about how long it would take me to scrub it off. Jonathan coughed, a deep heavy one that rocked his body. Then he shrugged. "Nobody knows. The whole neighborhood has been talking about it today. Everyone's been hit. Every house. Some prankster teenagers must have been busy all night." I sighed. Knowing if everyone's house in the neighborhood got graffitied, then the police would be involved. That's over 80 houses. Hundreds of angry victims. I wondered if this was covered under home insurance. I waved goodbye. "Let me know if you hear anything else. Most of us have Ring doorbells, so I'm sure the perpetrators will be caught soon." I headed back toward my home, then Jonathan put his fedora back on his head and added, "Yeah, and when they do, the cops should make them clean up their mess." I opened the front door and Robin was sitting on the couch with Chandler. The television played some kind of medical show about human anatomy. Robin had eclectic tastes, to say the least. She leaned her head back far over the cushion as I walked past and I kissed her gently. I noticed Chandler was asleep, his head in his mom's lap. Robin brushed his hair with delicate fingers. "How was work?" Same old, is Chandler feeling well?" "No." Robin looked down. "He has a mild fever. I might keep him home from school tomorrow if it doesn't go down." I dropped my briefcase on the kitchen counter and noticed some cleaning products there as well. The smell of bleach was strong. "Did you clean today?" "Yep, I took off work today and cleaned." "Are you feeling well?" I heard her laugh. "Never been better. Why have PTO days if you aren't going to use them?" I couldn't argue with that. I needed a few days off myself. Good luck convincing my boss that, though. I walked to the dining room window thinking about what Jonathan said. Every house. That's a tremendous amount of work for a pack of unruly teenagers. When I was a teenager, it was a struggle to do 15 minutes of homework, much less toil all night on a prank. A quick peek through the blinds revealed Mr. and Mrs. Reskova's house. None of the yards in our neighborhood were large and the houses were built close together. I didn't mind. A small yard meant less maintenance. Our row of houses on the street was lucky. At the back of them was a small stretch of woods. If I had leaves or sticks in my yard, over the back fence they went. I opened the blinds more and scanned the Reskova's house. Then I saw it. A blue-painted dot on the white brick wall. "Have you heard about the graffiti in the neighborhood?" I asked and unfastened my tie. "No. Is it an artist? I just watched a documentary about a graffiti artist named Banksy." I laughed. "Not quite." "Oh, you mean like vandalism?" I prompted Robin to the dining room and she paused her show and carefully got out from under Chandler and joined me next to the window. She saw the blue dot and shook her head. "Mrs. Reskova must be pissed. She told me she had her house repainted last week." "Everyone is going to be pissed. Every house in the neighborhood got tagged." She covered her mouth, clearly upset. "Every house, even ours?" "Yep," I said, popping the P sound. "Come look." I led her outside to the side of the house. Jonathan was gone, but I reiterated to Robin what he told me about the vandals possibly being kids. She thumbed the blue splotch and grimaced. Damn it. Speaking of kids, we saw 3 of them on bikes pedaling down the road, teeth showing through bright spring smiles, hair waving against the wind. They were laughing at something, and the one in the back, the smallest, kept yelling something to the other 2 about telling the truth. Could it be them? I asked, realizing my tie was loosely hanging down my chest. Too young. They're 9 at most. They aren't meticulous enough to vandalize every house in the neighborhood. Still, I wanted to be sure. I met them at my driveway and waved them down. They stopped in front of me in a line like a pack of baby-faced bikers, a combination of mischievousness and curiosity on each of their faces. Do y'all know who spray-painted all the houses? I asked them bluntly. The 2 bigger kids chuckled and looked back at the smaller one. He blushed and timidly nodded. Who? Yeah, tell him who, one of the bigger kids said sarcastically before the other added, unless you're freaking lying. The small kid's bottom lip jutted out in defiance. I swear I ain't lying, guys. I saw them last night. I woke up at 2 in the morning to go pee and I saw one out my window. Great, a witness. The unruly teenage culprits will definitely get what's coming to them. Who did you see? The kid blinked hard. It was a scientist. I frowned. A scientist? Yeah, he had one of those big hazmat suits on and everything. A harsh screech of tires cut him off. A pickup truck stopped forcefully in the middle of the road, and the window rolled down. The driver was a man with a thick goatee and had a worried look on his face. Son, get in the truck, I've looked for you everywhere. Where's Mom? Get in. My bike. Leave it. The smallest kid tossed his bike down next to my mailbox and hopped in his dad's truck. The man commanded the other kids to go to their respective home, then pierced me with a panic-stricken stare. It's not safe. Before I could respond, he was gone, the tires of his truck barking against the pavement. The other 2 kids glanced at one another, then pedaled down the road. What was that about? Robin asked from the porch. She looked radiant in the late afternoon sun. I shrugged and headed her way. I don't know, an emergency of some kind, I guess. Let's get inside. I need to see if we have any paint thinner to remove the dot. Before we went inside, I watched the man and his son swerve out of the neighborhood and race toward the highway. Not safe. He must be dealing with one hell of an emergency. A quick inspection of the garage proved that we didn't have any paint thinner, so I told Robin we could get some tomorrow. Normally, she would type a note in her phone for anything we needed for the house. Groceries, supplies, toys. She didn't type it in this time, a fact that didn't need explanation. Her memory was a lot better than mine. I was clearly annoyed at the day's bad luck, but Robin could always put me in a good mood. I removed my tie from my collar and looped it around her waist, then pulled her in close. Her soft eyes looked at me with desirous intent. I grinned. Since Chandler is asleep. And you look absolutely beautiful. She coyishly looked away. And I've had a bad day at work. Do you want a surprise? She gave me a long, passionate kiss, then put her lips next to my ear. Follow me upstairs. We went inside the house and turned to go upstairs to our bedroom, my body ready for a release of tension. We were interrupted by harsh, groaning sounds. Chandler was awake and clutching his stomach. "Mama," he mumbled, before throwing up on the coffee table. We ran to him as he started to cry. Robin picked up our 5-year-old and took him down the hall. She was saying, "Oh honey, I'll get you some medicine. No school for you tomorrow. before she disappeared into the bathroom. I looked at the mess Chandler had made. First work, then the graffiti pranksters now vomit. My week couldn't get any worse. I grabbed a trash can and a roll of paper towels and started to clean the table. The top of the bleach bottle was next to Chandler's favorite cup, so I carefully pushed them apart. Wouldn't want those coming in contact. The mess was sticky and smelled foul, but I did my best to clean up. Dads are never off duty, I suppose. I left my home early the next morning. I was eager to deal with the chaos at work. A project had been screwed up by some contractors and we had to find a solution. Fast. My mind cycled through possible ideas to solve our troubles. But when I tried to exit my neighborhood, I realized my troubles were just getting started. A blockade of Humvees stood at the entrance to our subdivision and impeded anyone from accessing the road that led to the highway. There was a line of cars waiting to leave, angry commuters who were late to work. At first, I thought there was a car wreck, but I realized that this wasn't the police. This was the National Guard. I counted 9 Humvees before a soldier donning a combat uniform approached my car. A large automatic rifle was slung over him, his hands resting on the stock. "The road is closed, sir. Please go back to your home." My words came out forced. "Is this about the graffiti?" "Turn around. I have work." He shook his head authoritatively. This was not an argument. "Go back to your home. The road is dangerous. No one can leave this neighborhood." I had a strong sense he was lying. I could see half a mile in either direction and the road looked perfectly fine. "I have to get to work." "Return to your home, sir, or do you want to be arrested?" "Arrested? For what?" "This is a national emergency incident. Return to your home immediately." The soldier walked away and approached a car that had arrived behind me. National emergency incident. What the hell did that mean? I looked down the road again and saw another convoy of military vehicles cruising toward us. Perhaps the road was dangerous. Maybe there had been a chemical spill or something. Despite my hunch that the soldier was lying, I made a 3-point turn and got out of the exit line and turned back into my subdivision. My boss was going to be pissed, but at least I could call in and explain. Zoom meetings are better than nothing. I sat in my driveway and called my office. It didn't ring once. Strange. I inspected my phone and no service was written at the top. Damn it. My level of anger was high when I went through my front door. My presence alarmed Robin and she came from Chandler's room in a panic. When she saw me, she laughed. "Did you forget something?" I stood beside our Wi-Fi router and opened my laptop. Since my cell phone wasn't working, I had to go with plan B. "No, there's some kind of emergency on the outlet road." She touched her chin. "What kind of emergency?" "I don't know, they're making everyone in our neighborhood return home." I quickly typed an email and sent it to my boss. An error bounce back message came instantly. My email refused to go through. "Can you let me see your cell phone? I have to call the office and let them." "It's not working." What? My heart began to sink. Something wasn't right here. It stopped working this morning. When I got up, I checked a news app, but it didn't load. We must need an update or something. "An update has nothing to do with it," I said as I made my way to the front door. I peeked out of a sidelight window and saw a Humvee slowly idling down the street. A soldier stood at the turret gun, his eyes oscillating between homes. I pressed my back against the door and slid down to the floor. "Babe, I think something is happening." She joined me, her face oddly calm. "What are you talking about, Dylan?" I was shaking now. "I don't know. The man yesterday, the one who drove away with his son, told me it's not safe. I think he was warning us. What's not safe? I stared off down the hallway toward my son's room. I'm not sure. Our phones don't work, our internet doesn't work. I'm going to talk with Jonathan and see if he knows what's going on. Check on Chandler and I'll come back in a few minutes. We separated and I left my house, cautiously making sure the Humvee was out of sight before I ran to my neighbor's house. The boy's bike was still felled by my mailbox. A typical morning in my neighborhood would include people going for jogs or walking their dogs. No one was on the sidewalk now. I got to my neighbor's porch. My quick raps on the door were answered by the steel barrel of a shotgun. I lifted my hands. "Don't shoot, it's me." Jonathan was wild-eyed. His hair was unkempt and he wore the same clothes I saw him in yesterday. "Who are you?" "I'm Dylan, your neighbor, remember?" He put the barrel against my throat and I pinched my eyes shut. Oh God, I was about to die. Right here on my neighbor's porch. Memories flooded back to me. My childhood and the fun I had with my siblings and friends. The first date I went on with Robin, which led to a proposal a year later. Robin and I curled up in bed, my hand resting on her swollen stomach, Chandler's birth, and the 5 wonderful years I've had with him. It all went by in a flash. Then my collar was tugged and I collapsed inside Jonathan's house. He slammed the door shut and I heard him lock the deadbolt. My eyes snapped open to find him offering me his hand. "Come here, I want to show you something." We were in his home office, looming over his desktop computer. He told me about the military's arrival and how they refused to let him leave early this morning to get breakfast downtown. He'd noticed the dead cell service and lack of internet connectivity too. But he had a closed-circuit security system that didn't run off Wi-Fi. He pointed to wires that ran from the wall into his computer, then he tapped his screen. "When you mentioned the Ring doorbell, it made me curious," he said, talking very quickly like a madman. "I checked my footage from the night before the spray-painted dot showed up. Look what I found." He played a clip from a camera angled from his house toward his front yard. It was in night vision and showed our street, the houses across it, and the roofs of the houses beyond that. The clip was over in 10 seconds. He snapped his fingers. "Did you see it?" I shook my head and thinking I needed to leave as soon as possible. The guy had lost all common sense. He replayed the clip. "This is from about 10 o'clock that night. Look closer." Then I saw it. A brief flash of dim light traversed the night sky before landing in the middle of the neighborhood. It was like a small firework, dying as it disappeared between some houses. He went to another clip explaining this one was taken 5 hours later. A group of people in hazmat suits strolled down the sidewalk, skirting each home and spraying every wall. They were marking them. The kid with the bike was correct. "What does it mean?" I asked, dumbfounded. Jonathan stared at the screen. "It means that something came here, something the government doesn't want to leave." "Came from where?" Jonathan looked up, straight up, and opened his mouth to answer. A harsh noise exploded from the front of his house and sent us both jumping off the ground. Jonathan grabbed his shotgun and raced down his hallway. I peeked out of his home office room to discover 2 soldiers had kicked in his door and were pointing their rifles at Jonathan. They shouted for him to drop his weapon, then a hail of gunfire erupted. Jonathan tumbled to the ground, his body a mess of blood and bullet holes. His fedora lay by his lifeless body. My heart leapt into my throat as I realized I was trapped. I could hide in the office room closet or behind the desk, but that would only delay the inevitable. Instead, I tried the window. It opened silently. I climbed out and darted through Jonathan's backyard, then scaled his backyard fence, hopping into the space between his property and my own. Shrubs and a dogwood tree hid my activity, but through the leaves I saw our road was now filled with Humvees. Soldiers scurried around the lawns of my neighbors. They were bursting into homes through doors and windows. I smelled smoke. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But I did know one thing. I had to get back to Robin and Chandler. I hopped my fence, foisting myself over the hard edge and landing sharply on my shoulder. The pain radiated up my neck, but I ignored it. I had to keep my family safe. A movement near Jonathan's house stole my attention, so I risked a glance through the fence pickets. 2 soldiers, burdened with flamethrowers, marched around the house. "These 2 are marked," one of the soldiers said. "Light 'em up." I bolted to my back door, kicking it in my hurried attempt to reach my family. Robin stood in the living room, a look of consternation on her face. Her attempt at a smile was pathetic. "Dylan, you're back." I grabbed her and looked her in the eyes. "We have to go, I'll grab Chandler." I turned to go, but Robin held me in place as she no longer looked scared but stern. Something had changed. She had learned something, and something terrible. "We can't take Chandler with us." My eyes teared up. "Why?" "I just spoke with Mrs. Reskova. She said something came from the sky 2 nights ago. Something that changed the children in our neighborhood." The children. My mind refused to believe it. "But Chandler." "No, Dylan, he's changed. I saw it. He's not our Chandler anymore. I locked him in his room." I turned back and saw a chair had been placed against the door. I ran down the hall against my wife's pleas. I cried out for my son, Chandler. "Daddy, help. Open the door, my stomach hurts." I touched the chair, ready to throw it aside and take him to safety. And then I saw Robin beside me. She was crying, begging me not to open the door. "We need to leave," she whispered. "It's not safe. It's not safe." I removed my hand from the chair and stepped back. Chandler beat against the door. "Please, Mama, please, Daddy, I'm scared. Let me out." Robin put her hands on my cheeks. Her fingers were cold. She was in shock, just like me, at all the chaos that was going on. A tear fell down her cheek. "Chandler is beyond our help. We need to leave now. My son, my sweet, beautiful Chandler." Suddenly, everything made sense. The light in the sky, the military presence, the markings on the homes. If Mrs. Reskova and Robin were correct, soldiers were here to eliminate an entire neighborhood so the spread of some cosmic virus wouldn't spread. A type of deadly pathogen that overtakes and controls the human body. A pathogen that overtook my son's body. I took another step back and began to weep. Robin patted me on the back. "Our son is gone, Dylan, but we can make it out." A new goal washed over me. I couldn't save my son, he was already lost, but I could save Robin. I grabbed her shoulder and pushed her toward the back door. I found the doorknob the instant our front door was caved in. Soldiers announced their presence, but we were already running through our backyard and toward the fence. One of the pickets in the back section was loose, a discovery we made last summer after we found a raccoon had snuck into our backyard, so I lifted it. We crawled through and dashed into a small wooded section. "Keep running, babe," I shouted. "Keep going straight and we'll get to the road. If we can get out before reinforcements come, we can get out of here." She was fast, running quickly over brambles and leaves, and I did my best to keep up. My shoulder was raging with pain now. Then we both stopped. A lone soldier stood with his back to us in a clearing. He hadn't spotted us yet. He called on his radio, then scanned the area. Robin and I hid behind a large oak tree. Now, facing back toward our neighborhood, I could see the roof of my home, Flames licked the sides and smoke billowed into the sky to join the smoke from other homes being burned. Chandler, my son, he was gone. They'd burned him. No. It wasn't my son they'd burned. It was something else, something terrible. I fought back tears, knowing I had to protect my wife. I grabbed her hand, my heart hammering so hard I couldn't even feel Robin's pulse in my palm. I knew what I had to do. "I love you," I whispered. "Keep running straight. Don't let them see you." I didn't let her respond. It was too painful, and I didn't want her to talk me out of it. I lunged from out of the cover of the tree and sprinted directly at the soldier. A response from his radio blocked the noise of my approach. By the time he turned around, it was too late. We fell to the ground in a wrestling match. I pinned my body against him so he couldn't raise his rifle. My fists went to work, but the man was strong. In a masterful move, he tossed my body off of his torso and rolled on top of me. He had a pistol at my head. "Don't effing move," he yelled, then called into his radio. "I got one uninfected." He removed some handcuffs and clamped them over my wrists. I spat at him. "Of course I'm not infected, you idiot," I shouted. "I'm not a child." The soldier wiped the blood off his busted lip and regarded me quizzically. "Child. Whatever landed here doesn't infect children. It only infects women." Women? I craned my neck to see where Robin was. She was no longer behind the tree. "Were you with anyone else?" the soldier asked. "A daughter, a sister, a wife?" A deep darkness swelled around me and grabbed at my mind. What had I done? What had I let my wife do to our son? I left Chandler there to burn. I looked around again for any sign of Robin. She had escaped.